Welcome to the Head Trash Show. My name is Alexia Leachman and I'm the founder of Head Trash, home to the new and unique head trash clearance method that removes unwanted negative thoughts, feelings and emotions quickly and effectively so that you can achieve clarity, confidence and contentment in your life. My goal with this podcast is to teach you how to create some headspace by helping you to unpick what's blocking you and sharing some tips and how-tos for clearing it. Tune in every week as I share simple strategies to help you to achieve confidence and clarity in your life and business. To find out how to clear your head trash quickly and effectively using our unique method, pop over to headtrash.com to get our free download and subscribe for our free head trash clearance updates. And now for the show. Hello and welcome back to the Head Trash Show. This is me, your host, Alexia Leachman. Now, on today's show, I'm going to be talking about emotions, but this time we're going to be talking about it from the scientific perspective. Yes. Now, I've had a few emails from people that want to have a little bit more understanding as to what's going on scientifically with the work that we're doing here at Head Trash. So what I thought I'd try and do is trying to get a better scientific understanding of emotions. Because let's face it, we cannot get away from our emotions, but it would be really interesting, fascinating almost, to hear what the scientists have got to say about what's going on with our emotions. But more importantly, is there anything that they can help us with? Is there any insights or research or anything useful that they can share with us to help us to deal better with our emotions and get over them more quickly or become more resilient in some way? So I thought I'd seek out somebody to try and help me answer these questions, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have on the show neuroscientist Dr. Lynda Shaw. Now, Dr. Lynda Shaw is a brilliant guest for so many reasons, but mainly because she's got a bit of a hat trick going on. And she originally trained as a social anthropologist, which means that she was really interested in culture and group behaviour and why people do the things they do in groups. And then she went on to do psychology. So obviously with psychology, it's more about why we behave as individuals, what's going on for us as an individual, as a person. And then on top of that, she then went to do neuroscience, which is about what's actually going on in the brain when it comes to what's going on for us. What is happening to us beneath the surface, but in the brain. So for me, she is just a perfect guest to have on the show, and somebody who I hope is going to be able to help us understand our emotions a lot better. So thank you, Lynda, for joining me today.
Hi, Alexia. How are you doing?
Fab, thanks, Lynda, and thanks for coming on the show. Now, one of the things that I want to know is, when it comes to all those negative emotions that we experience and the overwhelm that we might have and some of the ways that affects us in our lives, like fear and procrastination and stress and anxiety and all that kind of stuff, what is known within the scientific community about what's happening to us? How much research is there out there? What is it that you can share with us about what we know already about our emotional states?
Well, the thing is, when we try to overcome all those negative things that we managed to learn as children and beyond, and those limiting beliefs and which come from fear, and you've said quite rightly early on procrastination, which of course is another form of fear. There's huge amounts out there these days of helping people overcome these things. But the trouble is that is often tapping into people's conscious awareness problems, which is great, absolutely great. We've got to start somewhere. But if you get an A4 sheet of paper and you look at it and think about that sheet of paper is the conscious and unconscious brain, and then you draw a little circle on that piece of paper of which bit is consciousness, it's a dot on the piece of paper, right? The rest is unconsciousness. There's a huge amount, but it's a very tough thing to understand and to study. But we have, from my experiments, I demonstrated that we certainly do process emotion below conscious awareness. We definitely do that. There are all sorts of studies going on. Things like people are looking at hemi-neglect. And hemi-neglect is something that happens when somebody gets brain damage through a stroke or closed head injury that affects often the parietal part of the brain, which, if you think of the parietal brain, it's like, do you remember in the 1950s, those ladies who wore those little hats that snuggled to their heads like a skull cap?
Oh, yes.
Yeah? That's the parietal lobe. They were keeping their parietal lobe. So that's it. So if one side of that's damaged, sometimes people get something called hemi-neglect. And what that means is they deny one side of their body.
Right.
They deny one side of space. They deny one side of their computer or their dinner plate, or they don't comb one side of their hair or dress one side of their body. But they, if you, for instance, there was a famous study by Biziak and Ozati back in 1978. It's ages old now, but they got their patients with hemi-neglect to imagine they were standing in a square, and in Italy, it was in Milan, and they were had to say what they could see in their mind ahead of them if they were looking at one end of the square. So they described everything that was on their right. And in their imagination, they then turned around and looked at the other end of the square, and they then described, again, everything on their right. But of course, it was what was actually physically on the left. So they were unconsciously talking about what was going on, and they could remember of this square, even though they couldn't consciously say there was a left side to the square. Yeah. So I mean, this is absolutely a fantastic thing, and the point of that is that it's complicated, but the point of it is that we need to show that that even though we are not consciously aware of something, it affects our behaviour, and that's the point of this study, and that's the point of what your question was.
Yeah.
Is that unconscious stuff affects how we behave.
Yeah.
How we get... So that's what all this stuff in science is demonstrating when it looks at things like that. But so how we affect our unconscious processing is the tough one, and that's the one that will make the long-term difference. And one of the ways that I have seen work extremely well are people who are very diligent about meditating. I think meditation does absolutely phenomenal things, and because we become much more aware and sharper, and we're in control of our attention, and we do it. So it gives us a control over what's going on in our unconscious.
So can you tell us a little bit more about what is going on in our unconscious? Because that was the subject of your thesis, your research project, wasn't it?
Sure. My project a few years back now was looking at different pleasant and unpleasant images. So I showed people in behavioural experiments and fMRI scanning equipment, I showed them images of nice things and nasty things, but I made them so fast and also clouded, if you like, with backward and forward images, so that you had no chance of consciously seeing that particular image that was nice or nasty. And I asked them if there was a reaction, and in the behavioural experiment, I think it's about 2000, they agreed that they didn't see anything, but they knew they felt something, and they reported what they felt, which showed me that there was definitely unconscious processing of emotion going on. And then in the scanning equipment, when we looked at the brain activations, we looked at 9 different regions in the brain, and some of those areas were definitely activated when these people were presented with stimuli that was so fast they couldn't possibly consciously see it, but there was a reaction in the brain. So it did show that we do have unconscious processing of emotion, which is basically means it's below conscious threshold. We're not aware of it.
And from what you're saying as well, it sounds that we start processing that a lot quicker than our conscious mind can cope with. And so because we're processing that so much quicker, it may also start kicking off a process within the body as we start responding to that emotional response starts manifesting as a physical response. Is that right?
Absolutely. The emotional response will react and will create a physical response way before we're consciously aware of why we are responding the way we are. So yeah, definitely.
So might that be used? Could that be a great explanation for the fact that, suddenly we start feeling something in our body and then maybe we start labeling that with our conscious mind in a certain way. And it's the fact that we may be labeling it negatively as opposed to it actually being a negative thing that could be maybe where a lot of our own emotional upsets could be coming from.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the conscious, if you think about it, we are always in an emotional state. Even when we're dreaming, we're in an emotional state. Even if we're bored, it's an emotion. So what we tend to do is we then react emotionally to something. And I'm talking in big business, I'm talking corporates, I'm talking absolutely everywhere. But then afterwards, we then justify it with our logic. And so we put a label on it, and we respond, we react, we behave emotionally, and then try to justify it afterwards. So we do, and that can actually be, if you think about it, our emotional reaction sometimes isn't because of what we have seen, it's because of our experiences in our personal history that have come together for us to react in that way.
Right.
So it's a big story that can come to a point where we have an emotional reaction that can be quite illogical, but then we try to make it logical by excusing it, if you like, with our logical brain.
So one way of maybe helping us when we're trying to deal with an emotional reaction is to catch the conscious mind as it's in the middle of labeling something negatively and maybe relabel it in the moment to help us feel better. Is that a technique that can help us?
Yes, it is. I mean, that's what people who use any kind of meditation or mindfulness techniques will find, is that they can feel the emotion, but actually look at it quite objectively, rather than feel it totally subjectively and become overwhelmed. They recognise that they're feeling this, and they almost step outside of themselves and think, right, what's going on here? So, and that comes with a huge amount of practice, though.
So basically, it's just creating a little bit of a distance, or disassociating yourself with the emotion you're experiencing, and not making it you, but making it something that you're observing in yourself instead.
That's right. I mean, if we find ourselves in this turmoil of emotions that's cascading upon us, and we become totally overwhelmed, that's really, really bad for our brain, because and our consequence, our behaviour, because it's a very stressful place to be in. And when cortisol, the stress hormone, is flooding the brain, it means that it's suppressing all the other neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, which I'm sure your listeners are all very well aware of. Means that we don't sleep properly, we don't eat properly, we can't think clearly, we can't remember properly. It messes up huge amounts of things, and so therefore we're not functioning in our work, we're not functioning in our families, we're not functioning in our health properly. So it's very important for us not to become overwhelmed in this emotional turmoil.
And so why is it that some people seem to get more overwhelmed than others? Is there anything we can sort of put that down to?
At the minute we are born, we have individual experiences. So say, for instance, John has an experience in the first 1 minute, and then Mary has a different experience in her first 1 minute. Their second minute, John has another different experience, and Mary has a second experience. And those 2 minutes of experience for each person are different, but there's a dynamic between the 2 experiences. That is layered upon and layer upon layer upon layer right the way through our lives. So every individual is this incredibly complex dynamic of experience that no other single individual will have. Because how we react in that third minute of life will depend on what would have happened in the first 2 minutes. It's this constant layering. So when it comes to why some people react one way and others don't, depends completely on that individual's makeup.
So on the one hand, what I'm hearing there is, we these experiences happen to us. So maybe some people might go, well, that's just the life I've had, and so that's why I react the way I do. However, on the other hand, you can make a choice in that moment and decide not to react in a certain way. And so what do you think about that? The idea that there is that it almost sounds a bit like the sort of the fate, destiny kind of argument, doesn't it? Whether or not you have will in the moment to make a decision, or whether you allow what's happening to you to sort of carry you off.
That's right. That boils down to self-awareness. If you're driving along in a car and somebody cuts you up and you turn into this road rage maniac, and you just want to burn them up at the lights or something, you have a choice. You have a choice. It is to say, do I really go with my emotional reaction now and drive like an idiot, or do I just think, do you know what, you're going to have the heart attack, not me, you just go for it. And so we do have a choice, but we have to, in order to exercise that choice in that self-awareness, we need to be able to detach ourselves from the emotional reaction.
Right. So anything that we can do to help us to reach that place of distancing ourselves between us and the emotion, like meditation or like any other practices that might help us, that will help us to reduce the power that emotions have over us in the moment. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and remember that emotional reactions are there for a very good reason. They're to keep us safe. They're brilliant. Emotions are wonderful. So we have to acknowledge the value that they have. But equally, we must try to practice for them not to control us. Because in so doing, we're on a hiding to nowhere, because that's when we become overwhelmed and spiral out of control.
So in terms of, as part of the work that you've done in terms of sort of looking at the science behind what's happening beneath the surface with emotions, are there any sort of interesting findings that you've come across in your work that can help people when it comes to, us on an individual basis, helping us to get over ourselves and be better human beings?
There's huge amounts of work out there now, loads. In the last 20 or 30 years, I think this topic has, since the New Age began, we've been looking at the ways that we can better our lives, if you like. Sadly, we're not doing too well. If you look out there, there's people who are still highly overwhelmed and not in control of things. But we have to keep trying. So in terms of scientific research, there's a lot of scientific research on meditation and the brain. We do know that when we put our brain waves in something called alpha, which is the sort of that light meditation type, when you're staring out of a window and watching the rain fall, that sort of thing, that's when the brain is relaxed, but we are incredibly sharp and aware. We do know that when people actually operate at that level or even lower, in a slower speed of the brain waves, which is called theta, which is deep meditation, we know that there's physiological changes that goes on in the brain, especially in places called the prefrontal cortex, which is all about attention, all about control. Places like the insula, which is a very emotional part of the brain, and the hippocampus, we know that we can actually change the structure of that, which helps us become more in control of our attention, where we place it, and more aware, and also helps us with our emotional response to things. So we do know that structurally we can actually do those things that we heard from the hippie days being wonderful. We now know that there is scientific evidence, definitely, to show the brain responds brilliantly to this stuff. And so the behavior changes the structure of the brain, and the brain changes behavior. So if we're constantly working, weaving this and peeling back the layers, if you like, we can do wonderful things to help ourselves. Was that your question?
It was, yes, it was. I think, yes, it was.
Oh, good.
And I was just wondering as well, what about in, as day to day? Like, one thing I certainly observe in myself is when I'm tired, I just, all the negative emotions show up all together, However, when I've had a good night's sleep, I just feel a lot more resilient and things don't sort of affect me in the same way. Is that something that's observed scientifically, or is that just me, or what's going on there? Is that something we can all learn from?
Absolutely. Sleep deprivation is scientifically shown to be extremely dangerous. I mean, it's been used for torture for centuries. We can go positively insane when we don't sleep properly. If people are finding it tough to sleep at night, that happens a lot as people get older, that we need to adjust, because our sleep patterns change from the day we're born. Babies sleep 12 hours, and then it increases and then decreases, and then it increases again and decreases, and then our sleep pattern changes. Then teenagers just don't get up, unless they're forced to. And so all the time our sleep patterns change, and we have to work with that. So it's not just an age thing; it's also to do with our stress levels at any one time, or if indeed we're unwell. So we need to compensate. If somebody's not sleeping at all at night, then you've got to have a nap to actually function properly, even if it's a short nap. But there's a word with warning there. If somebody does choose to take 10 or 15 minutes out of their day to close their eyes, it's best to do it early on in the afternoon rather than later in the afternoon, because that will disrupt sleep even more. when we go to bed that night. So there are things, but absolutely, 100%. If we don't sleep properly, we don't function properly.
So are there other things that happen day to day that may affect our ability to process emotions or move on from emotions, or is there anything else other than sleep that can affect our ability to be emotionally resilient?
Yeah, okay. Emotional resilience, is that the question? Is
there anything else that we can do in the moment or in the day? We were talking about practice, like meditation practice, where you can have that habit. There's a cycle that you can, affect structural change that will create behavioural change. And if you maintain that through self-awareness and hard work over long periods of time, you can start improving your ability to be emotionally resilient. However, sleep can totally scupper that in the day. Is there anything else that can totally scupper that in the moment or help you in the moment to be more emotionally resilient?
Emotional resilience, as I say, will help. Meditation helps enormously because it allows us to stand outside of that emotion that we're feeling so that we can assess what's really going on and we have some control. Sleep is important. We must feel that we've slept well, otherwise we will become over-emotional. Hydration is an interesting one. When we are dehydrated, we get into brain fog.
Okay.
The colloquial term, but brain fog often, in fact, if you're an older person, very often people think that you have dementia, but sometimes it's not dementia, sometimes it actually is dehydration. So that's how vital hydration is. It can affect the way we think, it can affect our emotional response. So on a day-to-day, very practical basis, it's important that we feel that we've slept well, it's important that we're hydrated, and it's important, if we can, to take on some kind of meditation technique. And if we are not of a mind to meditate, because that's not the sort of thing we're interested in, then you've got to just walk away.
So you mentioned, just a little word that you said there, it's important that we feel that we slept well. So is there a difference between the actual number of hours sleep that we've had or what we think about the sleep that we've had? Because some people get stressed when they think they haven't had enough sleep and they need more, whereas in fact, if they didn't feel so bad about the sleep they had, they'd probably be okay. Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. I mean, there are plenty of people who function extremely well on 3 or 4 hours sleep a night. Others need 6 or 7. Some need 8. It's very individual. But what is quite interesting, as you've highlighted, is that some people, if they believe or they know that they need 7 hours sleep, for instance, and they don't get 7 hours sleep, they become really stressed out because it worries them so. Because they feel that that's going to affect their day really badly. Now, there's an argument there. Is that because that's what they convince themselves they need? Or actually, do they really need it on every night? Is the detrimental effect actually the stress that they're feeling because of their emotional response to feeling that they've only just had 5 hours sleep and they needed 7? So again, there is that sort of, is this my perception of the sleep I need, or is it actually what I need? But whatever it is hard to work out. So let's, on an individual basis, let's not work it out. Let's just think, right, if I haven't had my 7 hours sleep, I'm not going to worry about it because I'm going to take 15 minutes out at 2 o'clock and even if it's in my car, and close my eyes. I think one of the biggest things anybody should, or would be say helpful for them to take on board, is not to take these things too seriously.
To lighten up a bit.
Yeah, we need to lighten up. There's, where's it written that life shouldn't be fun?
Absolutely.
We live in a fantastic society in the UK. We have freedom of speech. We don't understand what war is firsthand anymore, apart from the very elderly. We don't understand what famine is. All those huge things. We actually don't know what it's like firsthand. Most people in this country. So let's remember that and just think. I'm worrying about this stuff that actually it's not important.
Absolutely. So you mentioned, fun, laughter. So obviously laughter is well recognised and I think well documented with science at the moment as well, with laughter studies and people running laughter sessions and laughter yoga, and how that can really kick off some great hormones around your body that can lift emotions very, very quickly, can't they? So now you're telling, the great advice you're sharing is drink water and have fun.
Yeah. Totally have fun, and also remember that not only does laughter do incredible things to the brain and neurotransmitters and all that stuff, but laughter also gives us respite in a very tough time. So if we're crying about something, we look inward. Okay, when we laugh, we look outward. Now, laughing isn't going to fix those things that we're upset about, but laughter will give us respite so that we can breathe a little easier to handle what we're upset about. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly when we work with people one-to-one, when we're able to help somebody to laugh at their problem, as it were, when you can laugh at whatever it is you're going through, you've moved on significantly in your relationship with that problem. It suddenly becomes less burdensome on you because you can laugh at it, and suddenly it kind of feels much lighter. So that ability to laugh at your own problems, to laugh at the situation, to laugh it off, basically, I think is a very powerful technique to help people to sort of lighten up.
Yeah, and it puts things in perspective. But even if you can't laugh at the situation you're in, you can laugh at a comedy video or something on YouTube that still gives you some respite. So even if you're not able to laugh at this, I mean, there's some terrible things that people go through, and even if they can't laugh at that, and also Hippocrates, I think it was, he used to actually prescribe laughter as medicine. And it's because it actually is a pain reliever. So it actually physically relieves a pain if somebody has an illness. So laughter's fantastic. It's not trivializing anything. It's helping.
Yeah, it is. It is. And thank you so much for that, Lynda. And I want to thank you for joining me today. You just shared some brilliant, real practical things that we can take away to build our emotional resilience. And I think the surprising one for me was just to stay hydrated, because I didn't realise how much lacking in water was affecting my emotional resilience. So I think that was a really interesting one that I wasn't expecting to hear. So thank you very much for sharing what you have today, Lynda. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. I had such fun. Thank you, Alexia.
Bye for now. Thank you.
Bye.
Well, I hope you found that as interesting and useful as I did. Certainly what I wasn't expecting to hear was the role that water plays in our emotional health. You know, the idea that you can maintain your emotional resilience purely by having another glass of water. Add to that getting a good night's sleep and making sure that you cram in as much laughter as you can in your day. Surely that seems like such an easy and simple way to stay emotionally on top of things and in tip-top condition. So hopefully you're going to find that really easy to maintain. I mean, this is really easy, practical stuff that you can start doing right now. Nothing complicated required, no expensive gadgets, nothing like that. This is simple stuff. So hopefully that is going to be something that you're going to start implementing straight away. Now, if you've got any questions at all or anything at all you want to ask me about our 5-step head trash clearance process that can help you to start batting away those negative emotions, getting rid of those fears out of your life, reducing things like procrastination, helping you to sleep better, all that kind of stuff, then please do let me know. You can download the 5-step process at the Head Trash website. Also, if you have any questions, come along to the Facebook group and I will be there in a jiffy to come and answer your questions. And as always, I'm at the end of an email, so please do email me at hello@headtrash.co.uk. So until next week, if you've got any questions, please do get in touch. But otherwise, you have a great week, happy clearing, and until next time, bye for now. You've just been listening to Alexia Leachman here on The Head Trash Show. If you enjoyed the show, I'd really appreciate you leaving a review here on iTunes. And don't forget to pop over to headtrash.com to get your copy of our free 5 Steps to Clearing Head Trash guide. So now stay tuned for upcoming episodes and more tips and how-tos for clearing your head trash and reclaiming your headspace. Until next time, bye for now.